Alright, click the links to join the channel here over at SubScribestar. So Looper comes for Nerdrotic, Sad, and Limp. They've got 50,000 followers on Twitter and zero interaction. There's a fair amount of these weird social media accounts that look like they're totally astroturf. Before, I had 5,000 on my last account before I got kicked off, which I get kicked off every few months. So 50,000 is really not a lot when they have name recognition. So they, and the media in general, are shilling hard for the absolute bombing Star Wars Acolyte. I can't wait to see what Disney Star Wars comes up with next for the next streaming show. Are they going to double down? I'm sure they will, and it'll just suck just as bad, because Acolyte is peak globalist propaganda. It's everything that they say they want. And yet, oddly enough, the left wing doesn't support this stuff, and that's something that doesn't get pointed out enough to these people. They always seem to be blaming the right wing for not watching left wing propaganda, and you just raise your hand and go, how come women aren't supporting this stupid movie? And they don't have an answer for you, because the reality is, it's like the movies, the shows, the stuff bombs because not enough people are supporting it. The left wing, or women in general, as you saw by Barbie, could make anything a hit. And yet, when Charlie's Angels fails, Elizabeth Banks is only blaming men. So this is the hollowed out flesh suit of a story created by Lucas and destroyed by Disney. Oh, and this is where you can just insert some straw man here. They're pretty well fungible. You're these values, and deflect from the issue of, I should zoom in on that, nobody watching the cancer that is just nothing more than very shallow propaganda. Keep in mind, this means that the left-wing bleeding pussy soy boys are not watching the feminist diverse abortions. They show a picture of the Larry Fink Acolyte, and they say, well, if you're not interested just based on the non-white picture, then you are a straw man here. And let me explain a few possibilities. First, am I going to get a strike for this? Shit, that's not what I want to do. Hold on. First, they might just be right. If people see those kind of characters on screen, there are plenty of people of all ethnicities who just want to see their tribe on screen, or mostly on screen. That's the preference, which is great. It's not a good or a bad thing. That's just their personal values, and if anything, that has become more prevalent over the events of the past 5 years. People have become very tribal, myself included, and honestly, like everyone I know, it's kind of interesting to see. But the other more likely probability is that people are cognizant that these globalist Disney shows have a history to them. A Mary Sue, anti-white, anti-Christian, if it's applicable, anti-national view. It's coming from a toxic left-wing globalist perspective, and they make no attempt to be unbiased, impartial. The Boys is a good example for the last season. And here's the thing, that is truly a horrible show. The viewer doesn't have to prove this to Disney or to some pussy on Twitter. That's their perception, a feeling they have based on past knowledge of how Disney treats different ethnicities of people. For the Euro ones, they're portrayed in a negative manner. If non-Euro, then a positive manner. And from my own experience, this is correct, but it's not on the viewer to explain this to some filthy twat on Twitter or Disney. The media shilling for Disney seems to fundamentally not understand what is happening. This can be simplified to a contract between buyer and seller. The buyer, the viewer, is not buying this because of their knowledge of how Disney treats different races of people. Blonde, blue eyes obviously is automatically bad, and dark is going to be Mary Sue. So yes, when the viewer looks at the publicity image for the Acolyte and sees black, Asian, Latin, Indian, whatever, they know the show is going to be garbage because of how Disney treats people, because based on the past few years, they'd be batting 1,000. Disney cannot make a diverse show that isn't woke cancer. They simply don't have it within themselves. That's not why they got into Hollywood. So things really are boiled down to a if-then program. If you see pox women on the cover, then it's going to be absolute woke, the worst show imaginable. And I say that because the correlation is 100%. There is no variance, at least not in the past several years. It's not phobic to read. They love that word, and I don't think they understand that it's losing power. Honestly, it's lost much of its power. It's not phobic to reach that conclusion, and it would be irrelevant if it was. If if Disney or Hollywood in general just treated people fairly, then you wouldn't have this phenomenon of the POC Mary Sue character, which people are starting to understand now. So anyway, the Looper is talking about why the Acolyte is getting criticism and is blaming Gary Nerdrotic and the other YouTube people, which when you think about it doesn't make sense because the left wing doesn't watch that brand of YouTube, the Comics Gay Phantom Menace, whatever. There's probably, I don't know, 100 channels loosely under that umbrella, and they wouldn't be influenced by the Phantom Menace anyway. So why aren't the left wing watching The Acolyte and all these other shows? What are they basing their judgment on to not watch it? The Looper never explains, and of course they deleted the video. The other thing they say when trying to explain why the terrible Nazis on YouTube don't like or in general, don't like the Acolyte is something about, well, there's been too much criticism of diversity and too much the big gay agenda, but that can be ignored immediately. We don't find that argument valid, which it's like the bear that's outside the cabin. You go, oh, I just don't believe in the concept of bears. People say that about guns. You hear that phrase. It's like, I don't believe in them or something. It's like, they're very real. What are you talking about? So this goes back to the fundamental disconnect between the woke media and the real world, because as I said, this simplifies to a contract of sale. Take all emotion out of it. The buyer says they won't watch a show because they don't like too much diversity or the BLT whatever elements. Then you stop right there because the buyer doesn't have to explain or justify his feelings. It might be any number of factors, but it doesn't matter. They don't want what woke Disney is selling. You can't argue the customer out of his position. And Looper and the other soy media calling the customer Hugo Boss doesn't matter anymore. The viewer doesn't care what some lispy, I'll say pussy instead of what I was going to say, has to say about anything. The media has been calling people istophobic Hugo Boss for the past 10 years. People don't care anymore. It won't get the people to watch the globalist propaganda. And let me put it a different way. When they do interviews with these idiots, and they just sound like idiots. I wish I could swear. When they do these interviews about what did that one chick say? So I love to see white people cry. Man, that is... maybe you shouldn't say that. It's like, oh, I wasn't talking about this show. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't say that in general. Just something to consider. When they do interviews, they say the dumbest things, like representation and empowering and uplifting pox women or whatever, so they can see themselves in positive... It's all this Frankfurt School, Saul Alinsky, Bolshevik buzzwords to manipulate people who are not giving this a whole lot of thought. So they can see themselves in positive roles and makes these pox walks, furry otherkin, empowering shows, which is, of course, the definition of propaganda, but turn it around and just replace pox with the European people of the light and just say the same stupid boilerplate talking points, but about uplifting and empowering European people and such. I mean, it's fun to say this on social media with a straight face, was why I get kicked off every 6 months. If they and they don't do that, then they're the istophobes. Now, people don't go as far down the rabbit hole as I do to troll these people and put these things into words. They just have kind of slowly learned that Hollywood and Disney in general, they feel dirty. It feels like there's something about these people that they really don't like us. They just seem to degrade and dehumanize people who look like us, and they roughly refer to it all as woke. And then the passive-aggressive soy boy, usually 300-pound weirdos, blue hair, on these childish weirdos. It's like they're in permanent adolescence. And unfortunately, there's a little bit of that on the right as well, where they might not be cooming and consuming to Disney, but it's like they're still playing video games instead of getting out there, meeting a chick, and making some babies. People just kind of roughly refer to it all as woke, and they just don't watch the shows. And Looper and shill media can run as much cover as they want. And the guy saying this article sounds like we'll say Lispy vagina. They can strawman the audience, but they can't insult people into watching the show. Hey, Hollywood, why don't you make some pro-European shows? Make shows with just European people in positive roles. I'd like to see more blonde-haired, blue-eyed people out of Nordic Central Casting. And like even to say that, it would be the needle on the record. They just can't fathom that somebody could be pro our side. It's like, but you guys just got done saying how pro black, Asian, Arab, Jewish, Latin, whatever you are. It's like, yeah, we feel that same way, but we're European, and they lose their effing mind over this. This is why Twitter is so much fun. I really do spend too much time, but you're never going to hear them say that. You're never going to hear an actor, producer, or director give those kind of Seth Rogen walking into a room talking about some show goes or some restaurant in his show. It's like, oh, I know it's good because I don't see there's something like too many white people are a bad thing, or it's like it's better the fewer white people the better. And you're looking at him like, you lack all self-awareness to say, like, people can hear you, right? Like they go through the world and they think everyone is just dumber than they are, or so dumb that they're an NPC or something. It's bizarre. But I mean, by all means, let these people talk. And the thing is, just because people aren't like getting outraged in their face at that moment, it doesn't mean they don't hear and listen. It's like when people tell you who they are, believe them. And Hollywood is telling you who they are. Anyway, you're never going to hear like, oh yeah, this is really empowering the Swedish people or something. It's like you'll never hear that. You've never heard that, and you will never hear that. Like, oh yeah, we just thought we'd get a bunch of white people together and make a something. It's like, yeah, you're going to be waiting a long time for that. They would lose their mind. They just wouldn't accept it. You would see steam come out of their ears. Obviously, you're never going to see that kind of stuff, and people are slowly awakening to this concept that Hollywood actually is the problem. They are racist. They're just anti-white racists. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I hope this video, I don't know, I've been showing this thing on repeat. I wonder if that's going to be an issue. And I will see you guys all next episode.